Bharat or India, one of the oldest running civilizations on the planet. And the backbone for this civilization is its rich education and value system. And this knowledge has been passed down through thousands of generations. And if we try to take a look back for recorded evidences about that education and value system, we generally find them on the temple carvings or the manuscripts. But neither these carvings nor the manuscripts hold the corpus knowledge system. The core of it has always been passed down not via the manuscripts or on the carvings and temples, but it is in a totally different format. That third format is Guru Sishya Parampara, which means the lineage of a guru to a student, further down to his student, and the chain goes on. And the fundamental reason for that kind of a teaching methodology, where the corpus education system relies heavily on a verbal transmission, is for a simple reason. Knowledge is of no use if you don't put it to practice. And it doesn't help if the entire knowledge system is concentrated in books lying up somewhere. You should be carrying the knowledge that you have with you all the times to apply it accordingly as per the time and the place. This is the core reason why the ancient Indian education system has always been a verbal than a written. So a very natural question that occurs is, how come people memorized such vast texts or scriptures as part of this education system? It is very difficult, right? Remembering a definition from a textbook word to word itself is a very tough task for us. That is the reason we try to understand the concept and replicate it with our own understanding, our school or college. How did people memorize such kind of vast texts or scriptures back then? Let us see. If one analyzes the ancient Indian scriptures, there are certain techniques that were employed while articulating great sources of knowledge. Let us briefly see what those techniques are, and these techniques are the main reasons why people could memorize the crux of the concepts in whichever field of education that you pick up. The first of it is being rhythmic. Most important trait of the scriptures, especially the Vedas, Rig Vedam, Yajur Vedam, Sama Vedam and Atharvana Vedam, all four of them, which has tens of thousands of hymns, follow a pattern which is governed by a Vedanga called Chandas. Chandas Shastra governs how rhythmically the words in a sentence can be arranged, which conveys the deep meaning as well as making it more memorizable with the pattern of rhythm that it follows. This is a very important technique that held the entire knowledge system together. The second one is being dialectical. It means more like a conversation, a story that you could memorize the essence of it, where the synopsis of the story conveys the values that one needs to carry. Take Sri Ramayana or Mahabharata or Panchatantra. There are many such dialectical articulations which one can easily memorize for its truth, for its values, for its essence, and then carry it all along. And there is a difference between Ramayana, Mahabharata and Panchatantra. Panchatantra is more a fictitious story which still has tons of values in it, while Sri Ramayana and Mahabharatam are itihasas, which means this is how it has happened, the historical records of this great culture. And the third one is being aphoristic or sutra format. And this is the reason why we are making this very short documentary. This is a very specialized format of composing any scripture. It is incredibly powerful. We'll see in detail about it in a minute, but the point is, this sutra format of composition or this third technique is very, very crucial, and it kind of acted like a reservoir of core knowledge. Now, our brief analysis of the scriptures gave these three, but there could be a lot many other techniques which probably we don't know, but for now, let's move on. So first, let's try to understand what is the meaning of the word sutra. Sutra in Sanskritam means a string that holds beads or any set of elements in an order. A relatively familiar word is Mangala Sutra, which is part of the Indian marriage system. A string that holds certain sacred elements in an order. And with the same connotation, a sutra also means a principle that could hold certain things in an order. That's what a sutra is. Let's take a quick look about how a sutra format of composition looks like. For instance, here is the manuscript of Panini's Ashtadhyayi. It's not the original manuscript, but it is already a couple of centuries old manuscript, handwritten one. So here I just highlighted the sutras with a small rectangular mark. They are like very short sentences, but each sentence is called as a sutra and it has a meaning associated with it. And there is no link between one sutra to other directly, but they could still refer to each other. Now this format of composition is not so easy. It has a lot of underlying technicalities, which makes it so special. And now let's see what they are. And this is what the definition of a sutra is. Swalpaksharam asangdigdam saravad vishwato mukham astobham anavadyam cha sutram sutra vido viduhu. Now let's break it down. This slokam explains about the properties of how a sutra needs to be constructed. Starting with the first one, Swalpaksharam, which means it should have minimum number of alphabets. In first place, it talks about the most optimal usage of alphabets in a principle. And the second one is Asangdigdam, which means it should be unambiguous. Absolutely, there should not be any room for perception. A sutra should be very specific. That is the second property. And the third property is Saravad, which means to be very concise. A sutra should convey the core essence or the crux of any concept. And the fourth property is Vishvatomukham, which means should be universal. That means a principle that you form it in the form of a sutra cannot and should not contradict with any other principle in any other fields of education. This is a very important property of a sutra, not just limited only to sutra, but for broadly the Indian education system as well. If you see the European history, there have been quite a conflicts between religion and science. But when it comes to Indian education system, absolutely there is no conflict between religion and science. Well, we can't really call it as a religion, but whatever the devotional aspect and the scientific aspect is never in contradiction with each other. Well, let's limit back to sutras, because if I start, it totally goes into a different direction, and we are planning for a detailed documentary on this one in coming future about science and devotion and how tightly they are intertwined in India. But for now, let's move on with sutras. Fifth property is Astobham, which means non-redundant. There should not be any kind of a repetition across multiple sutras talking about the same topic. Sixth and the last one is Anavadyamcha, which means without a flaw or without a break. A sutra does not break into two sentences. It is always just like one phrase or one sentence, and it should be absolutely flawless. And this is what a sutra is. These are the 6 technicalities in composing a sutra. So whenever you want to convey a message, a sutra can be anything. Like say for instance, you can write sutras about mechanics or grammar or Ayurveda. It could be any field of knowledge. If you are trying to codify it in the form of a sutras, then it should follow these 6 principles. And once all these 6 principles are followed, that phrase or that sutra is like something that is written in stone. It stays applicable all the times, and one need to memorize that one sentence to decode what the message about that concept is. Now this is the most detailed explanation about what a sutra is. Now let us see certain examples on about how our ancestors passed down these sutras to us. And when I am using the word our ancestors, it is not related to any language or religion or country. So anyone who has interest in understanding ancient Indian education system is part of this learning class. It's that simple. There are no religious or regional, caste-based or demographic biases that we intend. And in this channel, we don't believe in such nonsense. There are many ancient Indian scriptures that are composed in sutra format, and here are very few examples from those. The first one is Pingala's Chandas Sutras, which talk about the prosody or the linguistic rhythm that we can induce in composing any literary work. Second one is Baudhaina's Sulbha Sutras, which talks about the Vedic geometrical principles. And then we have Maharshi Kanada's Vaisheshika Sutras, which talks about laws of motion. And then we have Patanjali's Yoga Sutras, which detail at length about yoga. And then we have Panini's Vyakarana Sutras, part of Ashtadhyayi, which are composed in a sutra format. And there are many more. These are just 5 examples that we chose to briefly walk through in this video. And also one very important thing, we made individual documentaries for each of these sutras already. So I'm not going to cover them in detail. The links for each of these in detail will be given in the description below. Just to put them in the perspective of how we look at it from a sutra point of view, let's quickly flip over these. Starting with the first one, Pingalacharya's Chandas Shastra. As part of this, he gave Chandas Sutras, and the binary number system is so beautifully articulated in just 3-step algorithm. Dvikaglau Mishraucha Prudagla Mishra. And if one understands these 3 steps of the algorithm, what we have is the binary triplets, which is the basis for modern day computing. Here the main important thing is how it is articulated in a sutra format as Dvikaglau, that means there are 2 syllables, long and short. Misraucha, to mix them among themselves, and Prudhagla Mishra, which means to repeat the same step again. As I said, I did a half-an-hour documentary on this Chandas Sutras, and I'll not be covering them now. The link will be below. Let's move on. As an extension, this is one of my favorite algorithms of Pingalacharya. It says Pare Purnam and Pare Purnamiti. If one understands this in an elaborate way, based on the commentaries further provided by the rishis who came after Pingalacharya. So what Pingalacharya gave is the Pascal's triangle, what we know today, is actually given by Pingalacharya in the format of a Meru Prasthara. This again is if one should be able to understand what exactly the sutras of Pare Purnam and Pare Purnamiti, then they will be able to understand that it is a mathematical structure of Meru Prasthara. And this arrangement of numbers as a Meru Prasthara has incredible number of applications in different fields of mathematics, which is given by Pingalacharya in a simple sutra format as you're seeing it here. Again, how Pingalacharya's Meru Prasthara became Pascal's triangle I covered in a very detailed manner. The link is in the description. Up next is the Baudhayana Sulbha Sutras written by Maharishi Baudhayana, who is conservatively placed at around 800 BC, much before Pythagoras. He is the one who gave the Pythagoras theorem what we know today, is actually given by Maharishi Baudhayana. And this is also given in a sutra format called as Sulbha Sutras. And if one understands what is given in Sulbha Sutras, we'll be able to get to know the geometrical principles given as part of it. This one also I covered in detail already. Up next we have Maharshi Kanada's Vaisheshika Sutras, which talks about different laws of motion, and here is how he conceptualized gravity much before than any other civilization. Gurutva Prayatna Samyoganam Ukshepanam, which says that the upward movement of a body is a resultant of Prayatna, which is the external upward force, and Gurutva, which is the downward gravitational pull. This one as well I already covered, but this is one of the oldest written conceptualization about the gravitational force, simply given in a sutra format. Then we have Patanjali's Yoga Sutras, where he codified the entire ocean of yoga in just one line. And this is how it goes. Yama Niyama Asana Pranayama Pratyahara Dharana Dhyana Samadhi Yoga Ashtava Angani. These are the 8 limbs or the 8 steps in yoga, which is a journey of a Pashu becoming a Pashupati. I detailed out what these 8 are in a separate documentary on yoga recently. The link is in below. Then we have Panini's Vyakarana Sutras as part of Ashtadhyayi, world's oldest written and surviving and the most comprehensive grammar text till today. 14 Shiva Sutras and 4,000 Vyakarana Sutras. That is completely the Ashtadhyayi, that's all. Generally, grammar is something that evolves over a period of time. But the grammar in Sanskritam, which was codified by Panini since thousands of years, it is still valid and it will continue to be. And these are not my words. Do your research about Panini's Ashtadhyayi and you will be surprised to see how advanced it was that even till today, we are taking clues from it in developing the modern day grammar. Not just in Sanskritam or any other Indian language, but Panini's Ashtadhyayi was also an inspiration in developing parts of grammar in English and other European languages as well. Maybe let's save this topic for another day. But coming back to the sutra format, the way he codified the entire grammar in sutras is just incredible. So discreet, concise, and to the point. And that is the reason it is still valid till today. So those are the examples of how sutras are and how they are constructed, holding certain incredible details in different fields of education. So sutra format of Sanskritam, it is the most cryptic way of representing knowledge. And if one can remember the sutra, he or she can remember the entire concept. You know what? There is a challenge in modern day world which is still not resolved. Natural semantic meta-language. I repeat the words, natural semantic meta-language. It is a problem or a theory that attempts to reduce the number of words used in a sentence but still convey the same meaning. It is a modern day problem that is still not solved in any language. But Sanskritam stands high above all the languages across the world because of its power in expressing in a sutra format in this regard. The deepest of the meanings can be conveyed in shortest of its forms, which no other language is capable of, and I'm happy to be corrected if it's other way. Try to read about natural semantic meta-language, then you'll understand what the problem I'm talking about. So coming back to the sutra format. As sutra in itself is very complex and cryptic, there are other elaborations that were written on top of the sutras, either by the original author or his successors. For instance, Bhashyam is an elaborate explanation about a sutra. And then we have Vritti, which is a short form or a crisp explanation about what a sutra is. And then we have Vartika, which is a critical analysis of sutra, whether it will hold good all the times or not. It's more of a critical analysis about a given principle or a sutra. And then we have Vyakhyana, which is an elaborate, simple language explanation about a sutra, where common people can also understand what a sutra is. And then we have a Tippani. Tippani is a short explanation of the sutra, which everybody can understand. And these styles of articulation help people to absorb the knowledge verbally and hold it and use it as and when is needed. And that, in brief, is about sutras, which are the most cryptic form of articulation in Sanskritam. It is a very powerful technique which can serve as an inspiration in modern day data compression or computational linguistics and likes of it. Sanskritam as a language is always very special for properties like these. And in our channel Project Shivoham, we are trying our best to raise awareness about not just Sanskritam, but about the greatness of the ancient Indian knowledge system, which is the main reason why India has been an educational hub in the ancient world. But what's more important is, how can we use that to solve our modern day problems today? That is the most important thing. Knowing about history is one thing, but how can we use it to change our present day problems? That is the most important thing. And in this channel, we are trying to bring that inspirational elements which could help the current generation to know their history for its facts, truth, and values. And as always, thanks for watching.